time. For the woodworker, time has always been measured by the rhythm of his hands. With each cut, with each stroke of the hand plane, marking the steady march of hours, days, and months. Seasons shift around him almost imperceptibly. Their passage felt more in the subtle change of light than in any overt gesture. Time flies, but the good news is you're the pilot. 8 years. That's what it's been since we've had our last snowfall here in South Carolina. And it's also been 8 years since I've built this shop that we're currently standing in. That's hard to believe. Now, when I first started out in woodworking, I was just like you. I didn't quite know where to start or what to build. So today, I'm going to clear up all that frustration you might be having and show you a couple of projects that can get your shop pointed in the right direction and pick up some momentum to where you can start bringing in a big ass profit. So let's go. I'm making some 1¼ rips out of some 1x6, and you need approximately one 1x6x8 for this project. I cut the 1x6 to 5 foot, and that's what I'm getting these ripped out of, and the remaining 3 foot of this project will come into play later. For right now, we're going to go ahead and get our pieces cut, and they're going to be on a 45-degree angle at 5 inches long point to long point. And we'll need 48 of these pieces all together.
Damn!
Get yourself a stop block set up. That way you can batch out these 48 fairly quick and get consistent cuts. Just make sure you stop that blade all the way before releasing so it doesn't bind on you and cause any kickback. Alright, now we're going to take and get all these little hairs cleaned up with our block sander here. And this is where all the fun happens. We gon' add a dab of glue, 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 add a dab of glue. And we gonna pop a Brad in his ass. Basically, we're just lining up our short point of the top piece with the long point of our bottom. And we're going all the way around 360. So there's 8 pieces in total in each of our platforms. And we're going to be building 6 of these platforms. I'm going to go ahead and batch these out, and I'll meet you back here. I'm using 1¼ brads to nail these together with a little bit of glue. Make sure to line up those long points and short points before you nail it. That way you get consistent platforms. And keep those fingers out the way. You don't want to wind up popping a brad in your own ass, if you know what I'm saying. Have you subscribed to the channel yet? If not, why? It's absolutely free and it really helps us out. So remember, smack that like button, subscribe to the channel, share, and drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Now that all of our platforms are built and the glue is dry, we're going to flip them over and glue these up. We'll add a dab of glue. You just want to glue right on the corner of those 45s. And just double check that you're nice and flush on all corners. And we're gluing them up in a set of 3. So we'll put some weight on top of those. That way they don't move around while they're drying. I'm gonna get this other one glued together and I'll meet you right back here. All right, now that these are dried up, I'm gonna keep them with the bottom facing up. I've got a 1x4 for one of the bottoms, and we're gonna mark the center of that 1x4. Now what you wanna do is measure what you have in between these two long points here, and I'm looking like 1.25 inches. So we'll mark either side of that center mark 1/2 inches. And at those marks, we're going to be cutting a 45-degree angle going back into itself. Before we cut that, we need to measure our distance, and I've got 8 1/8. I'll pull from that left side 8 1/8. We'll square that mark over, and I'll do the same thing on this side that we did for these two 45s and cut the same angles going back in the same spot. We'll turn our miter to a 45 and make these two cuts. And I'll make a mark right here on my deck so I know where my piece needs to be to get that same exact cut. And there's our bottom for this piece. For our next bottom, I'm going to take a piece of this and rip it down to 5.5 inches. We'll be cutting this one at 8 1/8 as well, marking center once we get it cut. And then from that center mark, we'll split the 1.25 inches, going 5/8 and 5/8 on either side, cutting those 45-degree angles once again. And that will be the bottom for this piece. We'll add a dab of glue. And we're going to pop a Brad in his ass. And we'll add a dab of glue. Pop a Brad in his ass. Alright, the very next thing you want to do is measure the rake of your 45-degree miter here. And I've got 1 7/8 inches. So we're going to get some stock ripped down to 1 7/8 inches. Now just take and measure what you got in between the two long points, and it's looking like 2 1/4. So I'll cut 8 pieces at 2 1/4. And we'll go ahead and get these installed. And we're going to finish these up just how they are. I really like the look of these, especially when they're holding the plants. I'm going to be using one for a planter and one for a fruit basket. There's a number of options that you can choose when building this piece. You can glue them together where you have matching planters or fruit baskets, or you can even add a leg on either side and have a handle on it, or you can make a little teepee at the top. The options are endless. This project can really get your wheels turning and burning with that creativity. And speaking of creativity, we're moving on to our next project. Alright gang, for this next project, we're shooting for a big ass profit. Let's go. I've got a piece of ash here that is 2 inches in thickness and 6.5 in width. I'm going to get it cut down to 16 inches. Ultimately, I'll be resawing this ash in half, leaving us with approximately 1 inch. But I got to get it cleaned up first over here at the joiner and run it through the planer one time. But if you don't have any stock like I have, you can simply build this out of 3/4 inch stock. No problem. Before we get it resawn, I'm going to go ahead and rip this into 2 pieces at 3 inches. That way it's a little more manageable over at the bandsaw when we go to resaw it in half. I absolutely love whenever you resaw something and book match it, the colors that show up and the grain patterns. Kind of looks like a Joker face. That is too wild. Anyways, carrying on to our next step, we're going to wind up cutting a dado in the center of all these pieces. And let me show you why. Here, what I have is some strip lighting. It is battery powered, and of course it didn't come with batteries. So anyways, our strip lighting is about 1/8 inch in thickness, and it is approximately 3/8 of an inch in width. So we'll... Damn keys. So we'll choose our left and our right side, and our top and our bottom, and mark the insides of our pieces. We'll set our saw blade to about 1/8 inch in depth, a little deeper than 1/8 inch. We marked our center, and we're just going to sneak up on this dado, making a multiple pass with our flat tooth thin curve rip blade. Now over here at the miter saw, we're going to set our bevel to 45 degrees. And what I like to do to ensure I get the perfect miter joint is go 1/2 degree over that 45, and that just ensures that the outside of my joint will be nice and tight. We'll start by cutting our two sides, and we're going to try and keep those at 16 inches long point to long point. When making your cuts, just be sure that the long point is on the outside of where that dado sets. You don't want to cut these backwards. And our top and our bottom is going to be cut long point to long point at 14 inches. Now let's go ahead and get our frame glued together. We'll add a dab of glue. Check for square. All right, we'll set this to the side and let it dry. Okay, now while our frame is drying, I've got this piece of beautiful black walnut that I'm going to be using for the base of this piece. Now keep in mind, you don't have to use the hardwood like I'm using. You can use simple pine and stain it, but I just wanted to put some hardwood for this piece because I'm looking for a big profit. Now, one of the main reasons I'm using this walnut is because of this live edge. I want to incorporate that for the base. So I'm going to get this cut down to roughly 18.5 inches, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm using this right side for that live edge. I'm just going to set it right on top with about 2 inches overhanging on this side, and just make a little tick mark about 1 inch past on this side. And I'll use a straight edge to make a mark. That's the side I want. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get this cleaned up at the joiner and the planer, and I'm gonna get this side jointed down as well. That way I have a nice reference, and I will meet you back here. All right, folks, now here is where the real work begins. I need to get this piece that holds the batteries installed on the base underneath. I'm gonna route out a hole, and it needs to be at least 1 inch in depth. Now luckily, I was able to keep 1 3/8 inches in this piece, so just keep that in mind. If you're using some pine, you can use the 1x for your frame, but make sure you get a 2x for your base. That way you have enough room to install your battery capsule. It's 2 5/8 in width, and I need to cut it at 3.5 in length. I'm going to use a Forstner bit to get the bulk of this out, and I'll use the router to get the remainder up out of there. Alright, before I go and change clothes, because I am dusty, I am going to drill a hole through my frame and then through my base. That way I know where my wires need to go up through. And I'm just going to get this clamped in place. I'm going to be drilling that hole right through the center of where my frame is. And I'm using a 3/8 inch bit. All right, I'm gonna get this all sanded down and ready for finish and glue up. Go get my shirt changed and I'll meet you back here.
A few moments later.
All right, I went ahead and changed shirts, but I still got one more thing I need to route out. And that is a little groove for my wire to travel down my base. Not a big deal. We'll go ahead and get that handled right now. Make a little path so it can travel up through my hole. Doesn't have to be anything special. And there we go. We'll add a dab of glue, 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 add a dab of glue. Line our holes up with each other that we drilled earlier. A good way to make sure that we stay in the right spot is putting our drill bit back through there and clamp this thing up. All right, we'll let this dry up and I will meet you back here. All right, and now the real fun begins. This one is 4 foot in length, so I'm just gonna stretch it all the way out of there. And don't worry, I'll be leaving links for all of this stuff in the description. So we'll go ahead and feed that through. Pull your slack through. And then just start tracing out your dado. And we're just fitting it right now. That way I can make sure I know where to cut this. How about that? Right at the center. That is crazy. Alright, so there's my mark right there that I need to cut this. Oh God, I cut it. Okay, no turning back now, guys. Alright, so we will start sticking this. And just work your way all the way around. If you got a set of extra hands around the house, it wouldn't hurt. I want to get it nice and tight up in them corners. Alright, gang. We're going to hit it with a light coat of shellac. Watch this bad boy come to life. right here, including the lights, you're looking at about $40 worth of material with the lights and the finish. I would price this on my Etsy at $250 and start working deals from there. This is a unique custom project that you can even add personalization options to if you want. That way you can maximize on your profit. Scott.